Sorry, I think I got disconnected. Am I back? I hope I'm back, yeah. So as a supervisory committee, we have to make sure that we don't just follow the main supervisors. A lot of time when the main supervisor, yes, the supervisory committee will just follow. I think supervisor must function as independent, so-called independent individual in guiding the student. Okay, and it should be actually a balance check in the supervisory committee to making sure that the students are not overworked or underworked or actually work in the wrong way. Okay, so we do not just follow the rhythm of the chairman, because the chairman of the supervisory committee normally is the main supervisor who funded the work, who basically have a lot of say in the entire journey of the postgraduate study. But I think the co-supervisor playing a very important role to counterbalance check. Okay, and sometimes it's good to have at least two co-supervisor. Okay, one very senior who will be able to help you, especially if your supervisor is not a professor yet. So having a professor as co-supervisor is good, because they will be able to be the neutral person to help you to mediate through anything between you and your supervisor. And the co-supervisor who are very young is also good, because they are actually, the supervisor who will be much more willing to spend time, because they are also in the phase of developing their career. So they will be, more willing to spend time with you in the lab and showing you some, important techniques that maybe other supervisor may not be able to help you with. So proposal is number one. And of course, once you have proposal, and all is up to you to plan your experiment, to execute your experiment. I know some of you, okay, might be actually, complaining about my supervisors did not give me any directions. But then I have presented this as my objective. But sometimes the direction must be initiated by the students. Okay, I have my objective one. This is what I want to achieve. And to achieve this, I have like 10 experiments I need to do. Each of the experiment needs to be planned, needs to have things that I need to buy. So your supervisor can't monitor you, especially if your supervisor have many students, but it is always proactiveness of the student will basically makes a huge difference. So you need to really discuss and tell them, okay, these are a few activities I need to do within this semester, and this will lead me to achievement of objective one. And I need to buy this, buy this, buy this, and this is the amount of money that I need in order to buy all these things. And this is my experimental plan. So would you be able to comment on it? But if you do not come up with a plan for your supervisor will not be able to help you with it. And a lot of times, students also do not discuss with supervisor about how to do their work, and they ended up doing the experiment, coming back like a few months later showing the result, and then the supervisor realized, where is the control, where is the crucial control that you did not put into the experiment? So what's the point of collecting all this data when you do not have the crucial control? So then you would have, you might actually bang your head into the wall thinking about, why wouldn't I talk to you first, right? Why do I go and do all this experiment, listening to my listening to my seniors who are also doing their PhD or master in the lab, listening to perhaps a postdoc who may not be responsible to your research work, listening to your colleagues who are completely got nothing to do with your work. So you goes on and do your experiment, listening to their advice instead of your supervisory committee. Okay, so the more you sit with your supervisory committee, the more accurate, the more on time you're going to be. That's very important. Okay, there are many more other issues: unclear research scope, poor planning time and management, technical difficulty, repeated experiments because perhaps your machines are breaking down. You do not have you are not able to repeat the data. You keep on repeating them. Inadequate supervisory communication. I mentioned absence of consistent writing habits. Okay, you do not writing not just on paper, not just on thesis, but you do not have a consistent writing habits on your report. Because when you keep everything by the end of the your study, you would like to write your thesis, you find that, oh, where is the result I have actually collected long time ago. So management of your data and your lab report is very important, because that may actually lead you to repeat some of the very silly experiment just to get a better picture, better images in order to put into the thesis. So make sure that you do not turn back. Once you complete the result, complete the experiment, keep all the data in multiple backup copies so that you do not need to go back one day. Okay, you also have a lot of external factors, financial constraint, work commitments, health issue, personal responsibility, having newborns, baby in a family, and out of sudden, institutions stop funding your study. There's a lot of issues that are happening to you. And of course, not to say also that some of you might ended up, falling into clinical depressions or major depressions and anxiety that basically prevent you from moving further. Okay. So these are the reasons why we are not able to graduate on time. And I guess the next course of my work of our topic is going to discuss 8 cases based on some of these points, and then and try to find a solution out of it. Okay, that would be the strategies to overcome some of these issues that you might have already facing with your in your study right now. Case study number 1, health related delay. Okay, so of course you are year 2, everything progressing well, and out of sudden you started to feel fatigue and anxiety in your mental health. Okay, and because of that, then you started to have inconsistent progressions. Okay, you're missing milestone because you just do not have the motivations, and you feel you can't breathe when you go to the lab. Okay, and perhaps they got something to do with a lot of work pressure. You couldn't sleep well, and you could not recover fully before you went back to the lab. So a lot of times students really not taking care of themselves very well. So they going to the lab even though they are sick, they are not feeling well, because they want to achieve to graduate on time. But because in the course of graduate on time, you're putting so much pressure, so much obsession to graduate on time for whatever reason, so you ended up actually not feeling well. Okay, so because of that, you have delayed data completions. Okay, and that will basically leads to delay candidature, and normally that leads to more than a year of delay. So what would you do? Okay, but bear in mind, health is not separate from productivity. When your health goes down, your productivity goes down. Okay, without sustainable routines, even strong students will lose the momentum. So health is so important. So in this particular case, what would you do? Okay, if you can just give some feedback, okay, based on the QR code here, that would be great. So what would you do in case study number 1? If you have a health issue that prevent you from progressing well, do you want to maintain your candidature? I know people get stuck. For example, if I defer a semester, my scholarship differ. I can't get money, so I can't defer. So I must work. But then sometimes, if you don't defer, your conditions getting worse because you don't have actually spend time on yourself. But then if you don't defer and you continue on trying to work with such a bad health condition, you ended up not achieving a milestone because you cannot do things properly. Okay, so there are many school of thoughts about what do we do when you come to a health problem. Of course, we are not talking about having some cough or sore throat that can actually solve in a day or two, in a week or time. We are talking about mental health where you may actually ended up needing, an extended period of time to deal with. Okay, so look at some of the answer here. Some seek help from supervisor. That's very important. That's correct. Seek help, healing, and change small habit. Counseling. Okay, if you are dealing with some issues that you cannot face, for example, time management, you feel extremely stressed, and that leads to anxiety and difficulty in breathing. Perhaps, yeah, counseling might be actually useful. So stay at faculty more. That is interesting. Okay, so it really depends. Sometimes the problems start from home, family. Perhaps stay in faculty will allow you to be away from the problems, and that might actually helps you to focus on your work a little bit better. But it really depends. Staying away from the problems doesn't mean that you solve the problem. It's still in your mind. Okay, so take some break. I think that is a very good idea. So as a student who has been working very hard, I guess you should reward yourself every semester. Okay. Every semester, either you negotiate with your supervisor that you would like to go for an interstate conference as a small little reward, Or either it would be nicer if your supervisor is paying for the registration fee and also your travel expenses and hotel. Okay, the reason is because it gives you a milestone to achieve. Every semester, there's always a conference or little seminar I want to travel to. Okay, and a week or two before the seminar, I will stop my work. And 1 week after the seminar, I will not also start my work, because then the entire month or entire 2 or 3 weeks, you'll be actually away from lab work and only consolidating your data, so that you will, look forward to go elsewhere as a part of your, scientific endeavors. I think that's very good. And you can also take some break for vacation purposes away from all these things and start brand new. I think there's a very good idea here. Okay, for sure, if you have depressions, have anxiety, you should really seek counselor help. If the counselor cannot deal with you because you have already fallen into clinical status, clinical anxiety, clinical depressions, then perhaps you need to seek for professional help. And it's very important. A lot of time, people are reluctant to go and see psychiatrists because they think like, I'm not having that issue. I will be okay after that. But that is not the case. When a, when someone are no longer able to feel happy, okay, the neurotransmitter in the brain change. You won't be able to feel happy, until you get some medications to help you, to give you some neurotransmitter, the happy neurotransmitter in the brain, so that your neuron will be able to react to it. So taking medication is not all bad. Okay, it allows you to feel happy and feel rewarded again, so that you will build that motivations and momentum over the time. So I guess you all get the solutions here. Okay, not an issue. I will have this all summarized for you. Don't worry. Now back to this one. Let's move on to the second case study. Toxic supervisor. Okay. So you have minimal feedback again from your supervisor. Your supervisor keep on changing directions. Today we work with this objective. Tomorrow objective is changed. Next week objective change again. After you have done the work, the objective keep on changing. Okay, you have irregular meeting, no fixed meeting. Not every week, not every 2 weeks, or not every month. So meetings happens whenever the supervisor wants to see you, and you don't have any fixed meeting with them, so you do not know what to prepare for. You do not have like a gap for developing your presentation, to develop your result, to develop your little milestone, so that you can present, to your supervisor. It's important. Every time you see your supervisor, I know my students, some of you are here in today's talk. I know when you see me, you feel like stressful, because it's not because I have a lot of stress for my students. Yeah, they feel stressful because 2 weeks already I'm seeing my supervisor. I have nothing to put onto the PowerPoint. In fact, most supervisors don't look for that. I don't need every 2 weeks to have results on the PowerPoint. Okay, I know that sometimes the regular meetings can be good. Regular meetings, we make informed decision every 2 weeks or every week, so that you won't get deviated too much away, isn't it? But then sometimes regular meetings can be a stressful condition as well. Okay, so up to you to think about this: regular or irregular meeting. And of course, there are also unrealistic expectations. Your supervisor expect you to do 1 month experiment within 2 weeks time. So it looks like you don't have to go home. You sleep in the lab. You basically live in UPM forever. If your supervisor have that kind of thoughts, then it's very wrong. Okay, because we need to acknowledge, the students also have family, they have their personal life. It's not all about our project. It's not about their PhD. It's not about experiment. So of course, all this will lead to delay progress. Okay, and perhaps there are also other reasons why you have a toxic supervisor, and eventually leads to unsuitable experiment, redoing significant portion of the work. You end up in the vicious cycle of repetitive experiment, okay, that never ending. Okay, because every time you do something, your supervisor change the idea, and go on and on and on. Okay, so poor supervision can derail progress. Students must proactively manage communication or seek co-supervisory support early as possible. Okay, because sometimes communication is so important in order to make sure that what you want to do is conveyed to the supervisory committee itself. So in this case, when you have this issue with toxic supervisor, not necessarily based on what I have mentioned, So what would you do in this case? Let's look at the result. You have toxic supervisor. What would you do? No one want to answer this. Are you serious? Yeah, coming. Change your supervisor. That is a very good point. Okay, so first thing, change your supervisor is a very good point, especially if you are still in a proposal phase. You find that your supervisor is not contributing. You just realize your supervisor has no money and do not have the capacity to help you in your work. So change your supervisor. I think you must understand when you first enroll in your first semester, your supervisor, so-called supervisor, is officially known as advisor. Okay, they are not your main supervisor until you basically appoint your supervisory committee. So advisor is the name we call, and advisor can be changed. And the role of advisor is basically to advise you whether or not I am the best supervisor for you, or someone else could be some better supervisor for you. So you do not own the student, and the student do not own the supervisor. I think this must be very important. Okay, so at a very early stage, yes, I think I would suggest you change your supervisor so that you get someone who can help you exactly in the project that you wanted to do. But then if you're in your second year, you have invested time, you started doing experiments, some good results, some bad results. Now you're stuck, and you started to have know that the toxic supervisory mentoring becomes very prevalent now, because the time that you needed it the most, but then they can't help you. So document your work and report to co-supervisor. This is very good. Okay, as I mentioned, co-supervisor must function as independent individual. So your co-supervisor should be able to convince or to voice their point of view, thinking about why whatever the student has done is relevant and is usable. So then the supervisor will be able to consider or reconsider their decision. So this is important to make use of the co-supervisor. Inform the department, and this is actually a very very good solution. If you already not able to get co-supervisor to help, you have tried to talk to your supervisory committee and they really don't bother about you, they let you rot in your lab. So yes, inform the department, talk to someone with authority, like your head of departments, your deputy deans, and get their advice on what you can do. Okay, or seek advice from FGS. That is certainly a good things to do. They will have officer who will be able to tell you administratively what you can do, and what is the best way to mediate through, especially when you ended up with deadlock. Okay, supervisor not willing to back down, you're not willing to back down. So what are we going to do here? Okay, so if you're a very good speaker, you communicate very well, and your supervisor is the type that listen and are reasonable, they just don't have time for you, I guess you can actually talk to them. And if you cannot talk to them, sometimes you can write. Okay, write in a very nice way, not nasty way, nice way, conveying how you feel about your current situation. Okay, tell them how bad you feel about it, how much it might have affected your life, your I think it's very important to convey the message, telling them how exactly you feel. It's different thing if they still treat you the same, okay? But then, some students do not really tell their supervisor about how they feel. We are all working adults, so it's okay for you to tell your supervisor or your supervisory committee or your co-supervisor. During your supervisory committee, you have other supervisor around. I think you can tell how exactly you feel and how much that may have affected you. Okay, so we have students who cry in front of us at the time. So without your tears, sometimes the supervisors just didn't know that this thing might have affected you so much. I thought it's a very simple thing, right? But with your tears, now I understand. Okay, whatever we have been doing is wrong. I'm not asking you to cry like all the time. I'm just saying that conveying your feelings is very, very important. Okay, discuss openly to your supervisor. That's very true, in a nice way. Okay, make sure that is the case. Discuss with co-supervisor, change supervisor. I think the answer is communication here. Okay, it is all about communication. It's all about moving on with your committee, using and effective communication. There's a whole lot of session on communications. Okay. So communication is the way to go. So you need to work on that. Now, case study number 3, family and financial pressure. Okay, so you have first thing, you have not enough feedback, you do not have help. Then all of a sudden you lost financial support. Perhaps it could be financial support from family, because family business issue, family, someone lost in the family, no longer able to support you. Sudden change in institutional organization, you're no longer being given the scholarship. So lots of support, of financial support. Okay, then you also have part-time work. Okay, loss of your part-time, or you do part-time too much, you basically do not have time and energy to work on your experiment because you need to pay your semester fee. Or you might have ill family members that you have to take care of. Okay, family issues that you have to deal with, newborn baby that you have to deal with. Okay, sudden loss of family members leading that you need to deal with a lot of other grief, other feelings, other things as well. So all those things will certainly lead to extension. So what would you do? But the key lesson is external responsibilities impact academic timelines. Okay, because doing our research is not all about sitting for exam, pass it with certain grade, and then get your cert and then graduate. It is all about producing that novelty, that data. So that things, okay, the reason you're doing master PhD because you have that passions. Otherwise, you wouldn't do this. Okay, you wouldn't want to do a master PhD, and that topic is very close to you. You have a deep interest in it. So we understand why you are hardly separable from your project, talking about it, from doing your project, and so on and so forth. And therefore, when this is part of your life, your personal life changes, affects the project as well. Okay. So in case study number 3, what would you do in such scenario? Okay, let's scan this one. If you have financial constraint, perhaps you can also share your experience if those who have that same issue before, and what have you done and is effectively helping you. So I would defer the studies, especially those who are not receiving any scholarship. I think deferring study is actually very good idea. Okay, I think this is actually a very good idea because you don't have to pay the fee. At the same time, you can be off the hook from doing any work, and you can deal with your family and personal matter first. Okay, maybe you can go full force working part time to get a lot of money, so that when you come back, you do not come back with a lot more part times. You come back with less part time, so you can focus more on your work instead of losing both work and part time. Losing your productivity in the lab and so your work at part time. We might as well focus on one thing. And students are allowed to basically defer. Okay, defer due to health as well as financial constraint. What's the point? That we never force you to register because I know that you will not have money to pay for the fee. So for those who are really from B40, you are from like not very well being family, so you can certainly ask financial help from SGS, from Wazan, from many other organizations in 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 UPM, okay, including if your issue is about not having enough money to, in fact, buy yourself a good meals. There are also, zero hungers movement in UPM that provide you with meals. So then you can save the money for meals and use it for your some other things like your study. So take part-time job. That is certainly, if you haven't got a part-time job, taking a part-time job is actually very good way to sustain yourself financially. Ask money from UPM. I mentioned that should deal with family matters first and find a way to be financially supported. That's very important. And understanding what is the root cause of my financial constraint. If my root cause is family, so of course you have to solve the family issue. Okay, if your root cause is not family, but because you lost the scholarship because due to some institutional reorganization, political reorganization, your money being cut short. Instead of supporting you 3 years, you only give you 2 years. In fact, at that time point, family is the best bet. You should go back to the family. I need 1 more year of support. Will you be able to help me? For those with family members, with children, It's time that you ask in-laws, ask your parents, can you take care of my babies for now? Okay. Can you take care of my, toddlers for now? I need one more semester. I need two more semester to get it over. Okay. In fact, that is very useful. I have a student who got few months old baby when he joined me as a PhD student. Okay, I was shocked because I don't take part-time PhD student, and the students join me as a new father. Okay, at the same time he quit his job, his permanent position job, to join the PhD because he wanted to do a PhD. I refused to take him as a PhD student unless he's full-time in the lab. So he quit that thing, and I have a lot of pressure, and he has a lot of pressure. So at the end of the day, so he got scholarship, but then towards the end, he gets help from family members to take care of the children. At the end of the day, he has more children, taking care of the children. The wife is supporting him a little bit towards the end because the scholarship already ended. So all these things is very important. So keeping in touch with family, telling your family your well-being is important so that they will be able to help. You never know how much they'll be able to help. Discuss with supervisor for support in kind of cash. Okay, this is so true. A lot of time your supervisor has money, not their own personal money, but in the grant. So sometimes they can help you for temporarily, like for SGRA. You never know that they will be able to help you for SGRA for 1 month or 2 months. That kind of money is good enough for you to support, to solve the issue, okay, and allow you to move on. So yeah, talk with your supervisor is very important. And even though if you don't want to get money from your supervisor, telling them that you have financial issue and I need a bit more time to look for a job, or I need some time to solve my matters now. So I think it's also good to tell your supervisor so that they know that this month or next month you'll be off. So because you need to solve the issue, whether or not you're applying for a loan, you're basically trying to finish a job, a part-time job out there so that you can collect the money in order to, function better in the lab. Okay. And these are the things that we need to look at. And of course, there's also a suggestion here, revise research methods and data collection to cut the expenses. Okay, if this is actually the reasons where your supervisor is running out of money, okay, so we have to make the best out of it. Okay, the make best out of it. And one thing that no one is talking about here is collaboration. Okay, you know how much your lab mates, your group members, okay, under the same supervisor can help you to do something, especially when you're doing a part-time job. If they understand your situation, they will be able to help you with very small experiment so that you do not need to travel all the way back to UPenn just to change a little bit into an experiment, to put a drop of chemical into your cell, for example. So if you have that kind of mutual trust, so group mate is actually very important. Collaborating with your group members will be actually very good because they are your closest peer who will actually understand what is happening to you. Okay, so I think the answers are very well spoken here. So let's get back to the next case scenario. Case number 4. Perfectionism. I'm not quite sure how many of you, either the perfectionism comes from the supervisor or come from the student. Often it comes from the student. Okay. So again, you have repeatedly, refine your experiment. Some students cannot even carry out the experiment because they feel like they cannot formulate a perfect experimental design because everything there are always a limitation. So he keep on perfecting it until they cannot actually carry out the work. And this also leads to other perfectionism. For example, writing lab books. Some of you, the first few lab reports are so beautiful, right? So beautifully arranged because first semester, second semester, isn't it? You are in the phase 1 of your postgraduate study. But then when you do more and more experiment, you stop writing your lab books because you are trying to be perfectionist, right? I want to write like the way I wrote in my year 1, but now I could not because I have so much. I have my tissue paper with scribbles. I have my, notes on a piece of a recycled paper that I got from the bin. So I wrote down some data, some result. So all these things are now clipped here and there. And if you do not write them properly, and you cannot write them properly because you find that it's not perfect. I need to sit in front of my laptop. I need to type up the whole thing in order to get my reports done. Sometimes no. Okay, drafting is actually moving on. Okay, you don't have to always write a final version of everything. This including a thesis. Do not ever sit in front of a laptop trying to write a perfect paragraph from the first minute itself, because that will certainly lead to writing's block, and eventually you get nothing's achieved throughout the whole day or the whole week. Okay, because you are perfectionists, you are holding back on many things that you are doing. Okay, so external delays stem from perfectionisms, okay, progressions, not perfections, okay, that is actually drive the completion. You must understand that. So in this case, if you are a perfectionist or you were a perfectionist last time,
Mhm.
what have you done in order to solve this issue? You can share it with us. If you are a perfectionist, what would you done? What would you do? Join a weekly writing group. That is a very good idea. Okay, you have to get people who are as perfect as you. So create a writing group. Okay, so every week you will write a paragraph or two paragraph or a small little section. So force yourself to do that. Okay, because you are perfectionist, right? So you will always honor what you are trying to you agreed on. So with peer support, you'll be able to move on. Write crude, unpolished stuff, as long as something is there. I think this hit the jackpot. This is something I would certainly advise you all to do. Okay. Sometimes writing your thoughts are important. No need to do citation first. You have done enough reading literature, right? You know this, you know what is out there. If I want to write, for example, my first paragraph is always about the community, the problem statement, epidemiological issue. So I would say, Down syndrome is caused by blah 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 blah. Just write them in brief. As many how many in. I mean, you just put XXX in how many. 1,000 live birth people are affected by, let's say, this particular disease. So leave all those blank as XXX. Then you fill up later with the references that you have actually read before. You have read it before. You don't need to go and dig it out and then, okay, read back. Oh, it was, 5 out of 1,000 live birth will have this disease. You don't have to do that, because all these digging things out of nowhere from your different folders, especially now everyone's using a tablet. So digging all these things from tablet and everywhere is actually breaking your motivations of writing. Okay. So when you write, I think it's very important. This particular point here, write crude, unpolished stuff, because it's important that you write whatever you want to write, unpolished, and you can get ChatGPT to polish it for you. Am I right? You can do that now. Write that first and then fill in the citations later. Okay. Because the facts are there, the figures are there, but you just don't remember the exact figures, the exact fact. So you put an XXX there and then you fill in the blank. So that will allow you to write a continuous stretch of section in your thesis or in your paper that you can come back and, polish it later on. So let's see what else is set a routine, do a little every day is very important. Prioritize perfections over progress, which slows me down. So yeah, I think this person has learned a very important lesson, because if you want to have a perfect experiment, okay, you will never go anywhere, because there is no such thing called perfect experiment. If you have a perfect experiment, there won't be discussion in the thesis, there won't be future work in the thesis. So limitation in your experiment is a norm. Okay, knowing what is the limitations, okay, but knowing your limitations, and you can improve your limitation, and you don't do anything, that is bad. If you know the limitation and you can improve it, okay, you must improve it so that your experiment is much stronger, your claims becomes much stronger towards at the end of the day. But if you know your experiment is now the best, I couldn't do everything because of technical limitation, because of money limitations, because of the equipment, you don't have it here. Okay, and you have discussed with supervisory committee and they really cannot help you with it. So yes, I will be I need to be happy with this experiment and get it done and then get the best result out of it. Instead of complaining that, I wouldn't do this because I don't have one group that I wanted to add on and no one can help me. And you go and whine and whine and whine and feeling frustration, but then everyone else is moving on. Okay, it has moved on with their project. So I think this is something is very important. I think two key bring home message here: write crude, unpolished stuff, and polish it later, and then be consistent. Do a little every week, every day. You have to set a target and do everything a little bit every week or every day, so that you have this kind of sense of achievement. Okay, great. So, Encik Arif, we have until 11:30, am I right? Or we need to stop early? Can you let me know?
Yes, Prof.
Okay, so if we
11:30.
can, then we will move on. I think we will finish by 11:15. Another half an hour, I think we should be able to finish. I have only 8 case study. We're already in chapter 5. Okay, case study number 5. I think this is very common in UPM. Okay, not maybe in UPM, in Malaysia in general. Technical difficulties in experiments, contaminations, low reproducibility, okay, isolated data. This time you work, next time you cannot work, or maybe you only done your experiment one time, but your supervisor wanted at least to repeat it 2 or 3 times, right? But then you don't have the capacity to do that anymore. Equipment downtime, I guess everyone faced that issue. Facility access is not there because we can't access certain facilities. It can be as absurd as, like, in some places I heard, okay, they need to fill up a form to access the -80 freezer. That really brought down the productivity of the students. Getting to a freezer, you have to fill up a form, you have to make appointment. So I think that is just absurd. I think that is just plain, just unacceptable. Okay, so it depends, but this thing happens because of red tapes. Okay, so what would you do, or if you are already in this situation and you manage to get out of it? So, maybe you will be able to share with everyone. Okay, what would you do in this scenario when you ended up with a technically challenging situations? Doesn't matter whether it is administrations, whether it is equipments, whether you don't have the equipment, you always use the same equipment eventually. Then after that, it broken down and no one can fix it. Too expensive to be fixed. So what is your experience? What would you do? Rent equipment from other university? Yeah, that is actually a good idea. So something you need to discuss with your supervisor as well. Okay, you need to rent equipment. Seek help from peers and collaborators for equipment issues. I think this is very important point I would like to highlight. Okay, while everyone else still filling up the feedback. So the collaboration is what we do. Sometimes not in every lab, not in every university that you have a perfect setup for all experiment. And as a student, we should not our thinking, our thoughts, our ideas should not be limited by where you are. Sometimes I get frustrated as a supervisor because my students come to see me and tell me that we can't do this, we can't do that, and then they slowly killing the ideation process. They slowly no longer wanting to provide ideas like when they are still in their first semester. Okay, I acknowledge that supervisor kills the idea, but sometimes you should not be, your flame and fire should not be, dampened by your supervisor. And you should not only think of what you can do in UPM, you should think about what you can do from the science perspective. So if I want to do this experiment, I want to achieve this, I want to answer this very important question. What is the best way to do it? Even though I do not have that equipment here, I think it's important that you propose the best way to your supervisory committee and let the supervisory committee discuss and see if we can find an alternative, or perhaps send you to oversee and get it done if the idea is so important, the experiment is so important. But a lot of times, students ended up get trapped by its own thoughts that, why bother talking to my supervisor about, let's say, this experiment, he won't have money, he won't be able to do anything. And, there's no such equipment here. So why think so far away? Why want to be so advanced when our equipments are so lousy in the lab, for example? So that's not the case, because a lot of time we acknowledge that lab can be very basic, but your supervisor will have the experience and will have the network to tell you whatever you want to do. If I buy your idea, I will send you to somewhere that I think that you will get the things done. Okay. And in my group, I've been doing that to my students. We send them to overseas, we send them to a different lab, we send them to a different university so that we collaborate. So collaboration is the key, and do not allow the situation in the lab. And in other words, do not make prejudgment of what your supervisor or perhaps what you can do. Okay. So do not hold back on any ideas or any solution that you may have, because you were dampened by the situation, by the systemic issue that you have been sitting in all this while. Okay, so some students experience delay due to slow PO processing by the office, so which affects our experiment timeline. So I also think that supervisor will need to really think about this. For certain things that only cost you like 50 ringgit, 100 ringgit, perhaps like 300 ringgit. If you have the money, you have the saving, set aside some of this petty cash. Okay, this is for supervisor. Set aside some petty cash that you can use it to buy cash faster, bypass the PO processing so that you can claim it after that. And that money get turned around, all the time to buy urgent materials. Okay, that's a very good idea. Okay. Learn with lab partners about the protocols. Okay, collaboration is important, so your collaborators can do some part of the work. For example, you do everything, you collect all the sample that you want, but you do not have the expertise to do some of this at once experiment, but you wanted to do that. You can always pass your sample to them and let them do it for you. You don't have to be in the lab doing hands-on. Sometimes your partners, your lab mates are very good because they do that using the equipment for such a long time. So you do not need to learn how to use it and go through the entire vicious cycles of failing because you have never done the experiment before. So you can get your friends to do that part of the work for you. So then you get results straight away, because you don't have to do all the experiment. You just write that in a thesis. This part of the result was generated by, so and so in the lab. And then you incorporate them as a part of the larger experiment. So that will get you more results, and in fact move on faster than what you actually thought about. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next scenario. We're almost done with scenario. Number 6. Weak proposal, weak research directions. Some of you might have actually gone through this. I have also briefly talked about that. Like, I have this so-called, shit in, shit out. Okay, shitty material, shitty proposal. Okay, shitty data and interpretation you will get. So it's very important that in our research, especially for the largest group of participants today, come from the first year, look at your proposal. Okay, we don't just do the proposal just to get a satisfactory grade for our seminar proposal. Make use of this seminar proposal session, 1 credit, I know. Okay, make sure that you spend time looking into what you can do, what you cannot do, whether or not it is reasonable. So plan it out carefully. What is the most important thing in research proposal is the problems that we are trying to fix. The research question derived from the problem that you're trying to fix must be very strong. Okay, that is the rationale of your research. You don't want to do your research at the end of your final year. Okay, after thesis examination, you get a feedback like, what's the novelty? I don't see the novelty. So you're just merely repeating someone else's experiment, but at a different condition. What is a different condition? In Malaysia, in Malaysians' population. So you must be able to justify from the very beginning what is the problems that I am trying to fix. And with that, you have your research question. With your research question, you have your hypothesis. With the hypothesis, you formulate your objective. With your objective, you formulate your experiment, your activity that fulfilling each of the objective. So if that is all tabled out beautifully, okay, in your proposal, then that proposal shall work as a guideline. Okay, guideline for you throughout the entire 3 years. So objective one with the 5, 6 different experiment needs to be achieved by the end of second semester. Objective two in third semester. Objective three in fourth semester. Okay, and objective four in fifth semester, which I will work extremely hard to get my thesis drafted by the end of fifth semester, so I can submit, in the sixth semester and get it corrected and get my Senate letter, Viva and Senate letter in my seventh semester for a PhD student, for example. Okay, so again, please share with me if you're in such situations where you only to find out that people commenting on your work in your midway through your postgraduate study, perhaps in the third semester of master, or perhaps in your end of second year, that your work is not novel enough and you do not know what exactly you're addressing. What have you done? And what would you do in such scenario? Especially, I would like to hear from those who might have the same situation. How do you deal with that? Do you change a proposal? Or whoever in your second semester or third semester and still not done your seminar proposal because your supervisor never got the grant, so do not know what to do right now, and your job is keep on writing grant for them, and that is very wrong. Okay, I just want to let you know. So then now, in this case, what would you do if you are in that? So learn problem statement from YouTube to write a better proposal. And yeah, I think sometimes, with all these electronics, electronics informations, I know, there in the internet, informations in the internet. So I suggest that sometimes you can read and even watch how an experiment is being carried out, the techniques and what are the parameters you need to collect. I think that is important. Do some background watching video. Last time we need to read every single thing from papers. Now everything AI can, simplify it for you. So you should at least do some sort of, basic reading. I still get students come to me asking me the most basic question. Okay, the AKA the stupid questions that people are always too afraid to ask, right? So is that really a stupid question? There's never a stupid question, okay? But there are always questions that drive your supervisors crazy. Okay, a question are so basic that you can easily get result by just Googling it or get result by just looking at some papers or read textbook. But then they come and ask you, and when they ask you that questions and they already presenting you with the result, it also means that this person has done the project or the experiment without understanding, the most basic bits of their work. So that drives the supervisor's nut. Okay. And that also potentially leads to, bad communication between you and your supervisor, especially when your supervisors raise their voice, getting very agitated when you ask the most, simplest questions that you should have known before you do your experiment. Okay. So in that case, right, when you have a bad and poor proposal to start with, revise current data collected and find gaps and missing links. Okay, that's very important. Reframe your research topics with your supervisory committee. I think it's important you keep on going back to SV, supervisory committee, and tell them that, I would like to, use the research proposal that you has been approved. Now try to amend it. Okay. You amend it because someone has done it. Now you find that the problems that you try to solve has been solved. So there are newer problems that I can work on. So you might want to change your proposal. That's very important. Okay, do literature review early enough. Okay, let's say start with the SR to fill existing gap. What is SR? Maybe LR, you think the literature review. So learn problem statement from YouTube. Okay, faster looking for novelty and that's on a new objective is possible. Okay, I think it's very important. And for those who have not done your seminar proposal and you're in your second semester or third semester, you need to reflect. You need to reflect, why am I in such a situation and I have not finalized my research proposal even though I'm in my second and third semester. Okay, do that. So now back to this one. We're almost done. Case study number 7. I put depression and anxiety. Just now I know that I talk about health related issue. I just want to also talk about mental health in specific. Okay, because many students basically have this issue, but I think I can fast forward this because it's quite similar to the financial and health issue that we are talking about just now. So for students, many of you, especially in the second year, okay, during the doldrums, okay, that's the time that you have your prolonged stress. Okay, stress is good because stress is a motivation that kicks you into a mode that is much more motivated. Okay, but a lot of time when you do not get a lot of motivational words from your supervisor, from your peers, and your peers are just as toxic, as anyone else. They never compliment you. They always think that everything you do is wrong, even though it's correct. But then, some people just want to put you down, downer putter. So they just want to put you down so that you lost your confidence. So you become stressed over the time. So I think that's very important that I also advise my student. It's okay to get advice from peers, from postdoc, okay? From everyone. You can use the protocol from them. You can look at their result, observe how they do the experiment. But I want to remind you, okay, your peers who could be your so-called more experienced superior, okay, they are your senior. In other words, they are not necessarily good. They might be actually doing the mistake, even up to their seniority, and they are not realizing it. So watching your senior doing an experiment, watching them doing something, okay, always use them as the guideline and a reference only. Do not follow exactly what they are doing. As a student, you must have independent thoughts. You must review what they are doing, okay, compare them with the literature, with the scientific information that you have, and then you decide, are they doing the right thing? And if they're not doing the right things, I think it is a good thing you go and discuss with them. So tell them, with this paper that I've read, right? So would you be able to explain to me why do you do this step, which I think is not so appropriate? So the same thing, it's good that you make them realize that they are doing the wrong thing, even though they are in their third year or second year, so that they have the time to repeat the experiment. So that's why I'm saying a lot of the students get carried away. This is how my senior taught me. This is how my lab technicians taught me. Lab technicians don't know your project. Your senior do not know your project. Okay, even though they know your project, they may not know, exactly the right way of doing things because they may not be the perfect person. They are still not getting the degree yet. So it is important you always refer to supervisor. Do not judge and do not make assumption that your supervisor is too busy. Whenever it's needed, you make appointment, you see them, you discuss with them. What is the best way? Discuss with them first. Okay. So if you don't do that, okay, it leads to more problems. You will have a prolonged stress and isolation. Okay. And then after that, you see everyone moving on and you are not moving on. Okay. You start to have the depressions and anxiety because, you're getting into the third year, your scholarships are running out, or in fact, your financial aid is is ending soon. So you started not to talk to anyone because you feel bad, feel guilty because you don't have the data to show them. Your supervisor spends so much money on you and you're not getting result because you are listening to the wrong persons without knowing that you are wrong. So all these things will lead to depression and anxiety. And I think I'm going to skip this because I really want you to understand there's only one way when it comes to depression and anxiety. Seek professional help. Okay. And it is fine that you also speak to your supervisory committee or supervisor, especially if your supervisor are very what we call compassion. They understand what exactly is happening to you because we have gone through the same process. So tell them how you feel and what exactly you need right now. Okay. I think you need professional help. You need medications, and medication is the only way that allows you to feel confident and feel motivated again. Okay. Especially when you are in clinical depressions or anxiety. So I'm going to skip this for that. And for that, I go back to the last case study, difficulty working with peers or colleagues. And this is specifically dedicated for those of you never wanted to work with anyone. You always think that everyone else, just now I asked you, don't trust them fully. You can take their experience as reference, but a lot of time, they do the right things, right? But a lot of time you also fall into this trap where all of them are wrong. Whatever I'm doing is the only right way. Okay. So you don't work with anyone else, even, you don't share any material. You want everything prepared and purchased for you, personal and alone. Okay. You don't want to share pipette. You don't want to share chemical, everything. You want to do it, from beginning because you don't trust anyone. You only trust yourself and you don't entrust anyone to help you with any step of the work. So you want to start everything from beginning. Okay. So if that is the case, okay, being a lone ranger, so you will certainly not able to graduate on time. Okay. If you are able to graduate on time, I'm sure being a lone ranger, not able to work with anyone else, you already fall into depressions as well at some point of your study. Okay, research is not a solitary journey. It's collaboration, communication, and peer support that drive and enhance the efficiency of your research and help you to solve your problem. Your senior may not give you the solution, but seeing how bad they have done their experiment tells you what not to repeat. Your senior may not give you the wrong step, but they may be able to trigger you to do better, okay, in your experiment. So you need to talk to people. So any Lone Ranger here, or were you once upon a time a Lone Ranger? So what would you do, and what did you do to come out of that? And I would like to know if you are actually a Lone Ranger, how well are you doing now? Okay. Do you agree with me that you are delaying and you are not progressing well? So I would like to hear from you about this final case study. Anyone would like to feedback? Get lunch together. Excellent. I think that's the least you could do. Okay. Do not avoid lunch. My personal experience is that due to financial constraint when I was doing my PhD in Adelaide, okay, at the time, your scholarship are so little, only enough to pay for my rent. Okay. I'm talking about 20 years back. Okay. So at the time, I don't go out for lunch. I come to work around 11 a.m. because in the morning time, I need to cook. I need to cook for the entire day because I could not afford anything for lunch. And then I don't go out with anyone. I avoid socializing with my lab mate. So I work very late at night because I'm also a lone ranger at that time because I'm too inferior because not because I'm arrogant. I'm just too inferior as a Malaysians, spoon-fed student eventually going to overseas to do my PhD. I have to tell you that I ended up become a lone ranger, okay, not talking to anyone, not socializing for 2 years. For 2 years, I had been doing wrong things and ended up my supervisor, needs to drag me to a corner, to a room and talk to me, very seriously about my progression because I'm not progressing for the past 2 years with government scholarship, not with actually, sorry, with Melbourne's University scholarship. At that time, you can imagine, how sad I am. I was 2 years later, I get to find out that I've been in the wrong direction because I don't talk to people. Okay. So I've been wasting 2 years of my life in overseas and not getting anything done because I don't talk much about my result. I don't talk much about my work with anyone else. And I keep on doing wrong things over the period of 2 years' time. So communication is the key. Your friends is the key. Okay. Going out for lunch is the key. And sometimes if you think your supervisor is very hard to get along, so some people still will be able to get along with them. Instead of going along with them alone, invite them for lunch as a group. Okay, your student, 3 or 4 of you, invite them as a lunch. Invite your supervisor as a lunch. Go out for lunch because they are your supervisor, right? So during the lunch, you can go beyond. Don't talk about work. Talk about family. Talk about life, and perhaps that actually build the rapport between you and your supervisor, and it will makes you easier to speak to your friends and also your supervisor in the future. Okay. So go to conference and make networking. It is very important. We are talking about collaboration. Just like in one of the case scenario, you don't have to do everything yourself. So when you do collaborations, okay, you have the RNA, you have the DNA, you have the circuit board, everything built already. Now I want to test it in a different environment. Bring there and test it out. So you get a brand new chapters actually developed out of nowhere. And it is no without much money, without much thing, but then you have additional author to be placed on the paper. All right. At the same time, you have a very important result that you can now use to enhance your paper as well as enhance your thesis. So collaboration is the key to go. Okay, so there's no way that you can actually do things. But then someone explained here, I don't care. I seriously follow my schedule. I still communicate with others. I think, you see, I mean, you can certainly follow your schedule. Everyone should have their very strict schedule because you don't want to be influenced by your peers, especially when those do not do work in the lab, right? So they keep on bringing you, asking you out for, all kind of different activity, joining clubs and so on and so forth. So following your schedule is important. What I'm trying to say is, okay, communicating with others about your work, communicating with others about their work is very important to understand what can be done, what should not be done, okay, in the future. So that will reduce the vicious cycles of repeating your experiment. Okay, at the end of the day, outsource lab testing. That's the last bit lah. When your supervisor still got money and the grant is closing soon, so it seems like you cannot get it done. So let's outsource everything. Pay someone else to do your work. Okay, so that's not wrong as long as okay you have done your due diligence to learn that to design and also also execute the experiment. It's just that at the end of the day, instead of executing in your own lab or executing through a company, that is not an issue because the ideation is more important. Okay, are you still in control of your work? Instead of sending them sample and they interpret everything for you and you do not know how to interpret anything. So that is something that you should not actually come to. Okay, so I guess we have come to almost the end because we have now learned all the different scenario, why someone may not be graduating on time, and we also discuss about the solutions about how to overcome these challenges so that you'll be able to graduate on time. And I think I will share this with you later on the slide with Inti Arif and then can send to all the participants today. What is more important is that I have also listed down what are the potential solutions that you can adopt, but in a very theoretical way here. So of course, you identify the problems, apply a structured fixes as soon as you can, so that you will be having a timely graduation. The key is not just identifying the problems, but applying a structured fixes, okay, solutions to it as soon as you can, so that you don't drag it too long. We talk about delay proposal approval. We talk about poor planning, time management. We talk about unclear research scope. So I have all these suggestions for you, and we have already discussed about it just now in the case scenario. So you can look at it yourself. We have endless experiments because of perfectionism. We have technical and lab challenges. We have poor supervisors, communications, and these are basically the suggested strategies for you. And again, we have already discussed all of them in our case scenario. Okay, lack of writing habits, financial works, commitments, okay, and personal health and issues. We also already mentioned and discussed about it. So basically, you have the answer to most of the challenges and the problems that you might be facing. Okay, so the one most important thing is sometimes we do not know or we could not drag ourselves out of that particular doldrums. And being a lone ranger is even worse. Okay, so having friends and good communications about communicating your problems with your friends as well as your supervisory committee will allow you to be able to get out of that dilemmas, that doldrums much faster, so that you can be on track again to achieve your GOT. So burnout, loss of motivations, again, perfectionism, fear of criticism. So all these things I think we have discussed, and no worries. And you have all the solutions I have already listed here for you. The bottom line is most delays are not due to lack of ability. All of us have the ability, to achieve what we want. But it was the lack of structure, lack of communication, and lack of the execution system that actually preventing us from moving forwards. Okay. The students who graduate on time are not doing more work. They just doing the right work and consistently with very clear objective and boundaries. They know once it's done, it's done. Okay. I have all the data, all fully backed up, multiple copies. Now I move on to the next level. I don't have to come back and regenerate a small little image just for a better, thesis presentation. So this is what I'm trying to bring to you. Okay. So why exactly, I need to bother about graduating on time? So I list down 10 reasons, 10 strategic benefits. If I graduate on time, what would I get? Okay, professionally, you show strong time management, planning, and accountability. So when you go out and find a job and you tell you, oh, I started my PhD in 2022, I graduated 2025. Oh, I look at your paper, you publish as well, and you have done so much. What impression are you bringing to your future employers? Okay, it's all about how professional you are, how well you manage your time. So it was the image that you actually carry with you when you graduate on time. And that is very important. Of course, it reduces financial burden, right? Paying less semester fee means that you spend less money, especially those from overseas, from interstate who actually travel and have to rent a room, rent a house here. So the faster you graduate, the more money you can save. Okay, career progression. So you will not miss any opportunity. You will be able to get into the postdoctoralship much earlier, get your industrial job much earlier, get into academia much earlier as compared to your peers who are still, procrastinating, are still not out of the doldrums yet. You will be able to maintain research momentum. Your research that you are doing now, your knowledge are still, tip top. You are still talking about the latest technology. So not like those who drag them for 5 years or 6 years. At the 6th year, you're writing a result that you generated using a technology that was already 3 or 4 years past away ago. So, you may not be most updated with the latest technology, even though you are updated with the knowledge, but you don't have the practical skill because you don't get to do it anymore. Okay, at this time point. It protects mental well-being. Nothing can cure depressions than graduating, from your master or PhD at the end of the day. If the depressions and the anxiety is caused by your master and PhD, graduations from your master and PhD itself is certainly an absolute instant solution to the problem. Academic reputation reflect positively on you, on the supervisor, on the institutions. Okay, it means that you graduate on time. The institutions provide relevant support, relevant facilities, and also financial. Okay, for your research that allows you to graduate, without much hurdles. Increase publication efficiency, often publish earlier and more strategically, so you are not behind. Okay, you always publish the latest data, not the data that you generated 4 years ago, for example. Okay, so and risk potentially someone else published before you. Prevents opportunity loss. Okay, you graduated, you get a job. Okay, you won't miss out the job. You can apply for it straight away, like grants opening as well and collaboration, okay, with others. Improve life planning, okay. So enable smoother transition into personal goals and family. So you have a girlfriend that has been with you for a very long time because of your master and PhD. You spend 2 years, 3 years not moving on with your relationship because you channel all your resources, time, money, okay, buying a house, buying a car, all put on hold because I want to get my degree first. So now, the earlier you finish, the faster you can move on to the next phase of your life. Okay. And of course, it builds confidence and independence. Okay. Reinforcing self-efficacy and readiness for future challenges. I think these are the reasons why someone should really aim at graduating on time. And I also want to be fair that today, instead of talking about graduating on time, we also want to look into the 10 good reasons why not to be overly obsessed with graduating on time. So there must be a reasons why we don't get on time graduations. Okay, we graduate beyond second year, beyond third year, but for a good reason. Okay, because sometimes we value quality over speed. Okay, for certain experiment, it takes time, and in order to do that, I don't want to rush things. Quality is more important over speed. Learning takes time, especially on a very complicated experiment or equipment that may require you to really be trained multiple times before you can actually perform the ultimate experiment. And research is unpredictable. We can plan, but one disaster could wipe off all your data, could wipe off all your materials or your equipment, and things needs to be replanned once again. Protect mental health. Of course, some of you might be easily triggered into depression mode. So I'm able financially, so I prefer not to graduate on time because I want to do it at my pace. At the time, I can balance my life with my family, so then I do not lose both sides. But what do you lose? Okay, you lose time because you graduate later, but at the same time, you basically maintain the well-being of your mental as well as your family. Avoids poor decision making because of rushing your research, allows intellectual growth because some best ideas emerge from explorations, and a lot of time best ideas comes when you are a little bit more matured in your research timeline. We are talking about when you are in your end of second year or early third year. So you can graduate, but then especially international student, if I graduate and submit my thesis, right? Okay, so does it mean that all my SGRA will stop, all my funding will stop? So, but I have this good idea I want to continue doing in the lab. So maybe I should thinking submitting my thesis a bit later so that I can get my visa, continue on. I can basically still get my SGRA from the grant, and I can get another paper published, for example. Okay, so this is something I'm thinking about. Why someone can also not graduate on time for a good reason. Okay. So we want to not graduate on time because we want to encourage meaningful collaboration. Okay, like what I'm saying, staying a little bit more in the line because once you submitted your thesis, everything stops, right? You have to find a job. So I want to be as a student now because I enjoy collaboration. My result, my work is actually growing very well, and I want to continue working on it, and I don't want to move on to any employment just yet. Okay, maybe additional semester, additional year, for example. I have a PhD student who basically delay his submission of thesis because I was in Harvard Medical School, so there is an internship opening there. So a PhD student, my PhD student ended up, getting an internship there with 2,500 US dollar a month monthly payment. Okay, but then you need to have your visa, and the visa must be only granted to a student who registered in Malaysia institution, like you are still a registered student. So for that, you cannot defer. But then you have to think about not able to submit a thesis because once you submitted a thesis, you are no longer eligible for the United States visa at that time. So he decided to delay for a year, come to US, and then had an internship there for a year, and you know how much this person is gaining over the year time, exposure. You build your networking, your collaboration, and potential, postdoctoral employers as well. So he ended up submitting thesis, in I don't know, I think 8 or 9 semester. I think in the 5th year. But what he get a PhD with distinction at the end of the day. You didn't get graduate on time. I know he ended up with PhD with distinction, which is equally prestigious. When you write that in your CV. So supports adaptability is important, build stronger research output over time, and respect personal circumstances like health, family, and financial realities sometimes require adjusted timelines. So there are reasons why we should not being overly obsessed with graduating on time. And finally, I would like to end my slides, okay, that we embrace a balanced journey in our master and PhD study. Okay, we need to balance disciplines with growth, maintaining momentum without compromising research depth and personal well-being. We have to make sure that we foster iterative development, continuously refine our research through small intentional iteration. Don't wait until end of the study, then only you get feedback, and you start and try to start all over again. It's going to be, very, very backtracking. Okay, so graduate on time is a framework, it's a guideline. Okay, not a rigid constraint. We don't actually want 100% of everyone. I mean, of course, we want 100% people to graduate on time, but can we achieve it? Okay, can we not achieve it for a good reason, like I have mentioned? So we have to adapt it when necessary. Delays and are opportunities for refinement. Okay, remember that. Finally, focus on meaningful contributions. have I contributed, meaningfully to the scientific community, to my research problem? Have I helped, the community, the world, solving this problem through a small little step forward? Okay, that's more important instead of graduating myself on time and eventually your thesis bear almost no meaningful data. Okay, so these are the things we have to bear in mind. Okay, focus on meaningful contribution instead of simply graduating online. So discipline and planning, flexibility, adaptations are the pillars towards graduating on time, or perhaps not so on time, but graduating with strong finishing. Okay. So we want to finish strong, not just fast. I hope you get the idea today. And I'm happy to take questions with your mic switch on. You can ask questions straight away. I guess we have a few more minutes, right? So I'll take some questions because I have another talk at 11:35. So I can take a few questions if you have. Otherwise, then we'll be finishing here. Okay. So thank you so much for your time, and I really hope that you get some ideas from today's sharing. Any question, you can unmute yourself and speak through the mic if you want to. I'm not quite sure. Any question from the chat box? Maybe you can pick one or two if there's any questions. Okay, how about publication? If the paper is not published online but no money to pay APC, how can I do to pay this money? So there are many publications that do not require APC, and this also includes high-profile publications like Q1, Q2 journals. So Elsevier especially have many journals under Elsevier publisher basically has two publications mode. They have the open access that require APC, but they also have another mode that require you transfer your copyright to the journal, and therefore you lost your copyright, but at the same time, they do not charge APC. Okay, so there are journals that don't charge APC, and of course, when you publish something, discuss with your supervisor. Do they have money to pay for open access? If they have no money to pay for open access, go for non-open access. Okay, the journal are still, most of the articles are still accessible to all the middle income country, or embargoed for only 1 year. So 1 year later, it becomes accessible by all. Okay, so you have perhaps 1 year embargo. You're losing just 1 year of time that not everyone can read your article. Okay, let me see if there's any questions in the chat box. I'll pray for you seriously. Prayer alone cannot solve problems. It could be lack of proper communication between you. Okay, supervisor is the issue. Okay, so I'm not quite sure if there's
Hello.
any question. Yeah, okay, please.
The only question I ask is, will the recording of the seminar and the PowerPoint be available for us?
I don't know. Is that a recording? Yes, there's a recording. So I think Arif can share. So there will be, I can share the PDF of the presentation today, which I guess Arif can share with everyone. I doubt that you'll be reading it, but perhaps when you come to my level one day, you are trying to adjust and try to help your other students in the future. You might be able to use the material for that purposes. A lot of time, graduate on time is a part of our life lesson. Okay, so if there is no questions, any more questions? One last questions before I go for another talk. Any other burning questions or scenario you want to throw out that we can discuss about?
Prof,
Yes.
regarding the thesis writing, is it okay to use any AI tools for the improvement or language
Yeah.
verification for the
You have to
writing thesis
declare. So UPM make
as
it a
per the AI
compulsory to
policy?
declare. So UPM make it compulsory to declare your AI usage for what purposes and in which part of the chapter. If every chapter is used, the entire thesis is basically subjected to AI for whatever reason, you would have to declare that. So make sure that you use it modestly. And as a rule of thumb, is never use AI to synthesize. Okay. You can use AI to synthesize something which is not for your thesis, is fine, but then do not use AI to synthesize your writing, because thesis should be something. That's why I'm saying write in an unpolished way, if possible, at least do your due diligence as the student to draft the worst draft thesis ever. Remember, I was telling you, just keep on writing and blabbing without needing to search for the papers and things. Okay, after you have done that, put in the facts and figures that you want to talk about. Even result, you know, what is up, what is down, what is significant different, right? You blab it first in a very unpolished way. Okay, then you fit in the figures, increase by 30%, reduce by 15%. Once you fit that one, okay, so then you use AI to help you to make it better, especially when English is not your first language. So use AI to make it better for you without changing the content and the structure of the writing. So the AI will certainly make it really nice, very fluent for you, so that your supervisor reading, you know, and your examiners also reading it very nicely. So you can use AI to improve your writing, but not to synthesize your entire thesis. Okay, please don't do that. Don't put in your graph, your result there, and then write me a paragraph or the result and see how do I explain about it. So don't do that. But you can start with a very unpolished result writing and then ask AI to make it better. And you will eventually learn from AI that, oh, this is how I should really write my thing. And then the next time you will improve. Your writing becomes gradually improved. Okay. So that is what I want to tell you. Never use AI for the entire thesis formatting. For example, not to improve the language of the entire thesis. I will do section by section, bits by bits. Okay. After I have my draft ready. Okay, my very unpolished draft ready. So then you ask AI to improve it, then you basically finish that section, you move on to the next section. Okay, so that's doable, and then make sure that you declare that you use AI to improve language and the flow and grammatical checking. So that is perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
No problem. Okay, if there's no questions, I think Encik Arif, I pass it back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Prof, for I think a rather insightful and also engaging sharing from you, Prof. Also, would like to extend our sincere thanks to our collaborator, the Faculty of Medicine and Health Science, for support and also nominate Prof to be our speaker today. And for all the participants, have you enjoyed the session? Have some motivation throughout your studies, and we look forward for another session. I think there's a lot of session upcoming on Putra Sarjana, and also with collaboration of Faculty of Medicine and Health Science. Okay, once again, thank you, Prof.
Yeah, thanks for all the thumbs up. Thanks a lot. Thanks, you guys. Okay, really enjoy sharing everything with you. Bye bye. See you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Prof. Thank you, Putra Sarjana.
Thank you. Welcome, Ben Onoja.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah.